need anything. You need a political will, a determination. But the problem is that you've got a group of old men and women who are compromised from CODESA. We don't know what the Oppenheimer family discussed with them when they went into exile. They said to them, we're going to end apartheid. You're going to come back and rule South Africa, and it is going to be business as usual. Meaning you don't tamper with business. You can do those things of yours of politics. Where we are working, you won't do that. They agreed to it. We just know the issues that are above. We don't have the minute detail of what really transpired, because why would a person be scared to remove a statue of Kruger? The point I'm making is, if you have not been compromised, why would you be scared? Leave the economy and everything. A statue of a murderer. Every town in the whole of South Africa, small or big, has got a statue honoring apartheid generals. And Mugabe said, you can't tell me about South Africans are even scared to hit a statue of a white person. That's how much we are so compromised. So we need a new generation, which is not part of those commitments. We don't owe CODESA anything. We don't know what these guys discussed. They've had their 30 years to deliver on the product. We're a new generation with new challenges, and we cannot dare to CODESA minutes which we don't have.
Why the systemic destruction of the native competency and independence was very much part of the fabric of the relationship between big business and politicians, right? So then if you fast track to the transition in 1990, again, that transition was driven by big business. Why? They had figured out that the National Party at the time had lost the legitimacy, right? So they were dealing a legitimacy crisis, which means you are no longer able to ensure a stable environment for business to thrive.
Sure.
So the whole architecture of it, including who comes into power and all of that, that was done by big business. That's not a secret. That's recorded history, right?
Yeah.
When the politicians who were in exile were coming back here, there was no money to look after them. Some of the very notable people, I mean, it's known that someone like Thabo Mbeki stayed in the Carlton Hotel for a very long period when they were still looking for a permanent place for him to stay. People like Tito and others stayed in townhouses in Newville. Those were paid for by big business. So big business has been the invisible hand behind. What is important that I want to pull as a common thread to come to the solutions is, I think often when people think about the history, they miss that there has always been three key characters in history and in present, and there will also be the same characters in the future. And those three characters are big business, and it is society, and it is politicians.
Sure.
Now, each one of these groups has got its own self-serving interests. The theoretical parts of this will say politicians are looking for legitimacy, which is in a democratic society comes through votes. The big business is looking for capital accumulation or profit and all of that. Society is looking for prosperity. Actually, when you think about politics and government, it is how best you optimize between these various parties, right? And in many ways in the history of South Africa, there is, of these three parties, the one that is often least questioned is big business. Big business has always been on the scene,
Oh, yeah.
Even the Dutch East Indian Company, it was not the arrival of the Dutch, it was a company, right? So in understanding our problems, land issues, you have to see the role of each one of these parties for you to understand why we are here. So to come back to your question around our proposal, so when we look at the history of South Africa, we think the dominant party, actually since 1652 up to now, business has been setting the tone as the funder of politics.
Sure.
And we think The parties that we are going to take serious are those that look to renegotiate the terms with big business. Government has made concession after concession after concession. I mean, one of the notable things is, I don't know, most people don't know this, but in 1990, corporate tax rate was 50%. Today is 27%. This is just an example of concessions made over time. They said ease exchange controls. And how many times have you had we have to create a good environment for investment? Foreign that it just never comes. Right?
No matter how many more concessions keep getting given.
No matter how many more concessions. So where we are sitting now, we are sitting with a perfect crisis, right? We are sitting with a legitimacy crisis, i.e. the politicians are not as legitimate as they would have been. We are sitting with a capital accumulation crisis because business is not able to make the same amount of profits they used to make. We are sitting with a prosperity crisis. So it's a perfect crisis. When the National Party came out of government, it was mainly legitimacy crisis. Right? We have a perfect storm. So we think a credible party has to be able to negotiate this. So when I hear someone like Uncle Hammond coming and say, I'm a hopeless capitalist, I'm like, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't be in government. Because government is not a religion, so it's not. You're not coming here to endorse. You have to negotiate the terms between the various parties.
You can't. One governmental representative can't be the rep of one of the other social.
Can't be. You've lost. Absolutely. You've lost the cause from straight out of the block.
I love the analysis of the three spheres of society, and I think it's so true that we don't concentrate enough attention on big business, which has really been running.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think big business runs South Africa? I mean, how much influence do you think they actually have over the country?
Oh, big business has always run South Africa. So that's why I'm saying the arrival of the Dutch. It was not Dutch the country. It was not the army. It was a Dutch East Indian company. It was a corporate, right? Up to that point, and the concessions that politicians had to make, it was to accommodate big business.
The political parties aren't really naming big business as a problem. Yes, they talk about, quote, the economy. I don't know. The economy is largely dictated by big business in many different ways. In what ways do you think big business needs to be constrained, and what should we do differently? For example, I see that you've proposed, and you've already alluded to it, that BEE largely needs to be scrapped in its current form and replaced with something that's much better at bringing people into the economy without just enriching a few.
That's right. So by the way, none of these parties are bad, right? So I don't want the takeaway from this to be big business is bad. Big business is looking after big business.
Doing what it does best.
It will look for the lowest cost and the highest price in order to have the highest profit.
Absolutely.
Politicians are also just doing what they need to do. Society also. I mean, if people can get prosperity without doing anything, you'll be crazy to not take it. So the issue is not to label any party as bad, it's how do you balance things out. The thing about South Africa, though, is that when people talk about free economy and all of that, Adam Smith talked about this whole concept of free economy, but what people ignore is he also said what are the conditions under which free economy is appropriate. So he spoke about high levels of competition between businesses. So you should not have monopolies, oligopolies, and all of that. That already South Africa fails that, because if you think about many industries in South Africa, they are dominated by a few. So you are you're not even making the criteria for conditions for free economy. It said there should be highly educated members of society. Society should be a lot more informed about the options. You fail that in South Africa. So when people make it sound like the choice is between free economy and communism, we're like, no, but actually there's a whole lot of other options in between. So we don't want to stifle business. But what we are saying is, because of the developmental needs in South Africa, there has to continue to be a role for state to continue to intervene. But what we need to make a choice, I'm not saying we need hundreds of state-owned enterprises we have today. We have to say what are the things that are critical that if we left them to a big business, the profit motive will mean we will never reach sufficient people. It is, for example, it is too early for us to talk about privatization of anything in energy generation. It is too soon for us to talk about privatization of water or privatization of education. Why? We don't have the conditions for high level of competition between businesses for us to get the best value
going on.
Well, it's the Oppenheimers. When you talk land, you are a direct threat to the Oppenheimer family. So those who are saying the EFF is enemy number one, those who are saying we can't work with the EFF, go and look at their financials and who gave them millions just in the previous term. You will realize that these are the parties that are financed by Oppenheimers. They finance every party that is anti-expropriation of land without compensation. So
you've just watched clips featuring Julius Malema of the EFF and Jan Mohangwa of the Citizens. All these two politicians are agreeing that big business is running South Africa. And Julius Malema goes as far as naming the Oppenheimers as the one who are the founders of the South African economy, who are controlling the South African economy and wants to continue controlling the South African economy. They don't want to allow the economy of South Africa to go in the hands of blacks. What do you think about these statements from these two politicians? Do you agree with their assessment of the situation? Are we being run by big business? Are they really correct in their assessment of the current political situation? I'm raising this question as we coming closer to the May 29 general election, so that when we get there, we go there with adequate knowledge that will be assisting us in making our choices come the 29th of May, so that we try to balance the big business control in the South African political situation. Let's participate in the debates, let's participate in the political activities as we move closer to the election date, so that we take charge of this country rather than letting it be governed by big business. Because as you heard these two gentlemen, big business are focusing on their own interests. So we as citizens, we also need to take our interest to heart and then try to fight for our interests. My point is we cannot be allowing big business to continue dictating the terms of how this country is going to be run. We need to take charge as the voters, as the citizens of this country. We can't allow big business to dictate the terms. This is our time to, take the power into our own hands. We need to go out in numbers and vote correctly this time. We cannot allow, especially voting political parties which are funded by big business. It's clear big business is donating a lot of money into these political parties, especially new political parties without the track record. This time we need to be careful on what we put in government. In conclusion, I really want to thank you for watching. I also call upon all of you to become part of the debates, become part of the discussion, so that we continuously educate each other as we get towards the election. Please share this video to all your family and friends, and continue to share your views, your thoughts is very important so that we are aware on what is happening in the country. And also subscribe to this channel, because I will keep on sharing some information in regard to what is happening in our current political situation, so that we know who is funding which political party, so that we cannot go into this election not knowing who fund which political party, so that when we vote knowing who are we putting in government. We cannot continue to allow big business to dictate their terms. This is the time where we need to take power into our own hands. Democracy requires that we become educated voters and not just voting because we like a certain political party or certain political leader. We need to know what's behind those political parties, what are their funding models, who is funding those political party.